Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School, and I just wanna quilt. So today we talked to Dan Pellish. He is a member of our Quilting Army. He does charity quilting, he quilts for his friends and for his colleagues, and he also does art quilts. We have a lovely conversation. I hope you enjoy it about all kinds of things, art, life, everything. We do have a little bit of technical difficulty, so you might hear that every once in a while.
My name is Dan Pellish. I am calling from Maine.
Very cool.
Things are calming down here after Labor Day.
After Labor Day, yes. Well, it is. We are now officially in fall, aren't we? So.
Not officially, no, but
not officially.
Season is on the decline now, so things calm down.
Got it. Well, we had a storm here. We're supposed to have a storm here, so the kids had school off for 2 days. So we had a little bit of, summer back. So that we were very, very happy about that. Nobody wants to get up for school at the moment. All right. So tell me, what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
So my first memory of someone sewing in my life. Well, my mom and our family had a history of giving and donating and volunteering during the Christmas time. And so my mom asked me one year what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to make stuffed animals for little kids in the hospital.
Now, how old were you? How old were you when you suggested this?
I think at that point I was 7 or 8.
Wow. That's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Well, I mean, the kids in school had also done things like that as well. So,
yeah.
I mean, we were pretty adventurous for our age, I guess. But the first memory was actually a sewing fail because she pulled out the sewing machine to help us, and she had no idea how to thread the sewing machine. My grandmother had given her my great-great-grandmother's sewing machine and no instructions and never taught her how to sew. So
that's great.
We ended up breaking out needle and thread and making little stuffed animals for kids in the hospital.
So what happened to that sewing machine? Did you guys ever figure out how to get it threaded?
She did, and as she discovered that I loved quilting, she actually offered it to me.
Oh.
I don't have the space for it.
Yeah.
And I have too many sewing machines as is. I've got to donate one to a coworker who is starting her sewing adventure.
Very nice. Now, how many is too many sewing machines?
I have 4.
4 is a good amount, I have to say.
No, that's not a good amount.
That's a good amount, right?
2 would be a manageable number.
Yes, it's true.
And,
now,
as I keep looking at long arms, potentially 4 is definitely too many.
Yeah, I mean, the long arm, we did get one for the project, and part of it is I was so sick of trying to get everything pinned together for backings. So that was really, there was one moment where I was just like, enough, I don't want to do this anymore. So,
Pro tip, bring your quilts to a long armor to be basted.
Ah, that's awesome.
A lot of times they'll baste a quilt for you at a very reasonable rate, and then you don't have to do quite so much pinning.
Yeah, I hate the pinning. That's a great idea. That's a super great idea. That's really a good idea. All right, so tell me, when did you start quilting?
I started quilting in
So is that pre or post rotary cutter?
Oh, yes, I started with a rotary cutter.
You did?
Yes. Yeah, I have been rotary cutter all the way, and I have done machine quilting all the way.
Interesting.
I started, well, my grandmother got me excited about quilting because when I was a little kid, she made me a quilt out of all my favorite clothes that I couldn't jam my growing body into anymore.
Yeah.
So I came home from school one day, and she had made a quilt for me and for my brother out of all my favorite clothes.
Oh, that's good.
So
that's so nice. And
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then I kind of started watching, as in the 70s, PBS had quilting shows, and I thought that was really cool because we were always a crafty family. We always were making things, and so that kind of fit my personality.
Yeah.
Then along came the opportunity to buy a sewing machine and to start quilting, and I just immediately fell in love with it.
That's very cool.
I started making quilts for fun, and then I was asked to make quilts for AIDS charities.
Oh, interesting.
And that started being heartbreaking because I kept making donation quilts, and I didn't see anything happening other than all of my friends around me dying.
Yeah.
It started associating bad memories with quilting. So
I get it. Yeah.
I took a break from it for a while, and
because all it was sorrow. Then, right? Like the quilting was just quilting sadness.
Yeah. But then somebody had said, "Oh, I'm having a baby." So I said, "You know what? I'll make you a baby quilt," and found the joy again.
Yeah.
So now I try to balance my donation quilting and my cause quilting, and then art projects, and then just fun projects.
It's really interesting. So let's talk a little bit tell me about the donation quilting and cause quilting. What kind of donation and cause quilting are you doing?
So our guild, well, I have two guilds. I'm in Maine Modern Quilts, or Maine Modern Quilters, I guess I should say, which is actually a division of Pine Tree Quilt Guild. Pine Tree Quilt Guild is the umbrella quilt organization for all the quilt guilds in Maine.
Oh.
And then I'm also a member of Evergreen, which is located in Kennebunk, which is the closest town to me.
Got it.
Or closest meeting to me. The Evergreen donates. We make bags for women's shelters around Christmas time, and each of the members fills up with a personal care item or a thing that people who are evacuating their house immediately might not have.
Yeah.
So that they have a little bit of peace of mind, a little bit of not having to worry about things anymore.
How long does a bag take you to make?
I can make a bag in a couple of hours.
That's really interesting. I think it would be really interesting to understand the metrics of how much donation and charity quilting is happening in this country, because there's a lot going on. And I think it's kind of almost invisible in some way. Do you think? Like the labor and the cost and the love and all that time that we all are doing, that should be measured, because I think it's
really
important.
I think that the entire industry is undermeasured. I keep hearing people talk about quilting as being a dying art.
Yeah.
I don't think it's dying. I think it's something that so many people do solitary or off the radar that they don't even know about it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who aren't on social media, who don't share what they do. And the phrase "not your grandma's quilts." No offense to Mr. Houston, who does amazing quilts.
Yeah.
But I know so many grandmas who do amazing.
It's totally true.
Work.
Because so it's a funny thing, right? So not your grandmother's quilt is sort of saying, so people don't want to be defined as like, oh, this is an old person's art. But then like what is considered a grandmother has really shifted in kind of an amazing way too. So saying like, this is your grandmother's quilt. Like, let's like, and then people who do traditional quilting that is incredible, right? Those traditional grandmothers, let's not be rude to them either, right? Like,
exactly.
Right? It's an inclusive, amazing, vibrant space. Really, it is. At least from my perspective.
You can spend your day being offended by what people say about quilting, or you can choose to spend your day quilting.
Right.
I would rather be quilting than worrying about what people say.
Yeah.
I've been active on blogs and social media and other things, and it's always shout outs to ladies.
Yeah.
Well, I could say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not a lady.
Yeah.
You got to brush it off at some point.
Yeah. No, I get it. It's so interesting, isn't it? So many different. I mean, I think the thing I find interesting about this project is that if we're not careful, there is a kind of the industry favors people that look like me, right? A 50-year-old college-educated woman, but the truth is that the industry is maybe not the industry, but who is quilting is everybody. And so we're really trying to make that an important part of our project, because it's stupid. Like when I first started, someone was like, "I can't believe you have African American quilters on." I'm like, "How about just quilters? like we don't have to really well, this is ridiculous." I don't know. I just I find it all kind of interesting, and that the industry isn't as diverse as those who quilt either,
Well, but I would flip that argument though and say, does it need to be that diverse? Because you don't ask painters, do they need to have young paints or
right.
Brushes that are aimed at millennials.
Yeah.
All the tools are all the same.
Right. You're saying the tools sort of, right. How do you feel about sort of designers? Do you feel like the designers, that there's enough diversity in who is picked up by the major, I don't even know. I mean, maybe there is plenty of diversity. How do you feel about sort of who gets picked as the fabric people and the designers and all of that?
It's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
There's so much fabric and so many different designers.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, there are going to be the rock star designers.
Yeah.
And then there are the workaday designers. But nowadays, with Spoonflower and other things like that, you can be your own designer.
Totally. Now, have you ever used Spoonflower? We haven't done that yet.
I have not used Spoonflower. I am trying to keep myself focused.
Yeah.
I do have a project coming up that I want to work on, where I want to print my own fabric. We had a little demonstration at Guild on how to use jelly plates to print our own fabric. and I've since kind of investigated that a little more. And I think the images that come off of it are very cool, but I also don't want to get down a rabbit hole of spending my time all on printing fabric, because I know how I am. I will obsess about things, and I'll just make and make and make and make and make, and then I'll be like, oh, now I have this giant pile of fabric.
Right.
What am I going to do with it?
Right.
Oh, yeah, I need to get back to quilting again.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so let's get... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I can find much of what I need at the local quilt shops. And up here, we have a discount warehouse that they don't specialize in fabric, but they do have a huge fabric selection. So I'm paying about a quarter of what I would spend at a big box store.
Wow, that's amazing.
For fabric.
That's great.
So I'm blessed in that way.
Hugely blessed. That's so cool. All right, so we were talking about donation and cause quilts. Other kinds of spaces that you operate with donation and cause quilts?
So we also make donation quilts for the Linus Project.
Yeah.
We make placemats for Meals on Wheels. And there's also donation quilts for children going through cleft palate surgery. So they have comfort quilts. And then a bunch of the ladies at Guild, which I haven't been involved with because I'm not a clothing sewer, but they are involved in the Dress a Girl project.
Yeah, right.
Which sends dresses to third world countries so that girls can go to school, because sometimes they're going to school just in a t-shirt as a dress.
Wow.
And that can make them targets.
Interesting. Very interesting. For those that don't know it, tell people what the Linus Project is.
I wish I had more information on the Linus Project.
You don't. That's cool.
Project Linus. I know that it's very active up here. The store that I buy the fabric from takes collection quilts. I was doing a demonstration in store the other day, and a woman came in to collect a pile of about 16 blankets for the quilts for the Linus Project. I haven't read the backstory. I've only made the quilt.
You just make the quilts. That's really interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Well, we'll try to chat with them. All right. So you do the donation and cause quilting. And then you said something about art quilts. Tell us a little bit. What is an art quilt for those that don't know?
I would say what splits an art quilt from a traditional or even a modern quilt is that I would say modern quilts don't necessarily fall into that sort of block patterning. Mm-hmm. And art quilts can actually be any traditional quilt. You could. I get kind of upset about trying to divide into the different camps.
I agree.
Because I cross all the different areas. In fact, we tried to kind of make a chart of where everybody's at on all the different camps of traditional or modern or art quilts when it came time for me to put my pin on the board, I put my pin outside the board on the wall because I'm everywhere.
That's really great.
I'm all over the place. I do things that are very traditional. I do modern traditional. I do some modern. I want to get more into modern because it's very abstract, and I find the ability to play much more freeing, and you don't have to. I like precision, but I don't like to spend my time worrying about, are my points exact?
Yeah.
Is this? I want to get my artistic vision or my creative idea out there. I want to get it out of my head. A couple years ago, Mean Quilts had a challenge for red and white quilts, and I said, what isn't red and white? And I said, well, the ocean's not red and white. And so I took a spin from Hokusai's Great Wave, and I flipped it and translated it into fabric.
Oh, that's so cool.
So to me, that's art. I have seen people do modern art quilts where it's sometimes linear, it's sometimes very abstract. I've seen people do representational art. So it's very much like any other end of the visual arts world, where it can be representational, it can be abstract, it can be impressionist. There are people who are doing some pretty amazing sort of watercolor looking quilts.
It is remarkable, isn't it? Like what people are doing. Yep. It does. There's no limit on what people are doing, I think, with quilting at this point. Do you agree?
Yes.
It's just kind of remarkable.
Exactly.
Now I'm looking at the wave you did, the red wave. It is so cool. How did you make? And I'm putting it on the webpage that'll go with this interview. How did you make that? So it is a wave, and it's red, and it's red and white, and it's just it's beautiful. Like, what techniques did you use to make it?
So first, I started doing the base with curved piecing. My challenge to myself that year was start doing curves, because I had always kind of wanted to do something other than linear curves. I mean, straight lines you can accomplish a lot with, but curves are a lot more freeing. And everyone I talked to said, "Oh, curves are difficult. Curves are difficult." Well, I had talked to another woman, and she said, "Just do it." So, watched a couple of videos on how to do it, and then started doing those curves. So I laid out the curve. First, I laid everything out on craft paper, translated the base curves into the base fabric curves on quilting, and then I layered on with machine applique all of the detail in the wave.
And is it raw edge applique? Did you needle turn the applique?
It's raw edge.
Really cool.
I'd love to say I have the patience for needle turn. I am not a hand sewer in any way, shape, or form. I really don't have any talent for that at all. Trying to sew the hanging sleeve on is the very last thing I do for any show, and it's endlessly frustrating.
Interesting. Now, how important is entering shows to sort of your identity, or like when you're making quilts? Like, do you know when you start a quilt that you're going to enter it into a show, or do you, like, as you get done, think, this would be good for entering into a show?
So the first show that I entered was actually with the Red Wave, and then I did a statement piece about the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And that's very modern, and I called that one Border Wars. It's a multi-layer sort of thing, because some people were saying, "Oh, you don't put borders on your quilts. You really need to put borders on your quilt."
Yeah.
Well, I don't enjoy the look
of the borders. Yeah, I get that.
So I purposefully string pieced and made things not match and not line up.
Is there a picture? The Border Wars one. Is there a place I could look to see a picture of it?
I'll shoot you copies of all the photos that I have of all the different quilts
that's great.
I have.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's not only got the lines of conflict, but I've also got some curves going in there with the quilting. It makes it also look like bombs going off in the area, or bomb targets. And then I also purposefully chose red as my bobbin thread and white as my top thread, so that it would look like little picks of blood coming through the quilt.
How interesting. That's really interesting.
It really bothered me that the conflict just kind of fell off the radar instantly, and we were on to the next thing. We have such a very short memory span these days.
Yeah,
and it kind of bothered me. Those type of political pieces, I like to limit those to once a year. But back to what you were saying,
right.
I entered those simply because the modern quilt main modern quilters was saying, look, we really want to have representation at the show.
Yeah.
It wasn't important to me that people give me feedback about my work. I like to know technically what I can do to improve my work.
Yeah.
But subject-wise, I mean, unless you...
So let me ask you this. I think, so I'm teaching an art law class at the university right now, and we were trying to explain, like, what is art, right? And this was it was really tough. Like, this is a tough, I mean, we can sort of see in different parts of law, like the customs or copyright or, these different spaces. But with this art law stuff, I mean, with art quilts, I'm starting to get to the point where I know that there's a distinction when you're making an art quilt, there's a level of detail usually. And, but I think that in some way, could you say that all quilts are art quilts in some way? They're just, some are just more artsy. I don't know what that line is,
So that's my partner is a oil painter.
Oh, interesting.
And that is a driving discussion that we have all the time. When we go out on road trips, the discussion of what is art comes up almost every single time, because you could argue that a Coca-Cola art.
Yes, and it is, right? Because we have Andy Warhol that uses Campbell soup cans, right? Right.
Exactly. So I leave that what is art very open. I know other people define it very narrowly. I guess if you were to take a Coca-Cola can and translate it into fabric, even though
yeah, we're still having trouble with you. Yeah. Say that again. So yeah, so I just feel like the definition, like, first of all, like, I think I come back to, like, why does it matter? Like, why does it matter whether we define it as an art quilt or not? Do you have a sense of, like, when it matters? Because then I also think about, like, when museums, I don't know. Like, what is art? I don't know. Does it matter? Can it all just be art? I don't know. Maybe I'm just an inclusivity kind of person.
I sew with that they are artists.
Yeah.
And it caused a hubbub the first time I did it. There's an open sew that happens at one of the local quilt shops. And I had said to the ladies, "You are all artists."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, we're not. No, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not this, we're not that. we just sew. And I'm like, but you're artists, you create, and you do amazing work. Oh, but this is wrong and that is wrong. And I'm like, no. I mean, and yes, I guess there's a level of distinction between an artist and a master. I mean, anyone can paint.
Right. So maybe there's levels of it, right? Maybe it's like, but I don't know.
If you paint, you're an artist.
Right. Okay, so we were talking when we were rudely interrupted by technology about art. And we were asking, you were saying that your partner is a oil painter and that you have these conversations about what is art. And I'm curious, let's start again on that part. So what do you think? And when we were talking about it in terms of, you said you did art quilts and we talked about your art quilts. And then I was like, well, when is it an art quilt? And then we got into this sort of bigger conversation of what is art. And what was your thoughts about that?
Well, my thought is that all quilts are art.
I agree.
But there are quilts that quilters define as art quilts, whether they are representational or abstract. They define them as art quilts simply because they aren't using blocks.
Right, and it seems like art quilts... Let's think this through. I think that art quilts look more like paintings sometimes, and that's why they get defined as art quilts. Would you agree with that? Like they don't have to be. That's right. But that there's a kind of tendency to think of art quilts as, well, they look more like what artists do, like painters.
As people say over and over again, there are no quilt police.
Yes.
So there's no have to be with things.
That's right.
I think too many times we're comfortable when we can define a thing, when we can put it in a box.
Right.
And so we say, oh, that's an art quilt, or oh, that's modern quilt, or that's that's more traditional.
Right.
When something fits into multiple boxes, people are like, oh, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that, which I think is very strange, very sad in a way, because we can just let it be and judge it whether we like it, we don't like it, does it provoke thought. I mean, Sean Kimber's work, I think
I love her work.
Amazing.
I'm totally madly in love with her work, right?
And there's parts of it that's disturbing, and it makes you feel very sad or
do you think that art quilt
upset.
Is that part of what an art quilt does? Even if we can't define it, is it something that evokes something? But I think all quilts kind of do, though, right?
Yes, sometimes no.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Van Gogh's almond blossoms, does it make you feel angry or happy?
Right.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, but I would still
you
call
don't
it
need
art.
that. Yeah, that doesn't have to be part of the definition. And it doesn't have to be beautiful. That's not part of the definition either, because art doesn't have to be beautiful.
No.
And it doesn't have to have skill, right? It can have skill.
Honestly, one of my strongest reactions was an installation down at the Guggenheim Museum in Manhattan. I had to leave the room because it was sculptures that were very misogynistic, and I don't know if that was the artist's intent, but it was so visually violent to me that I had to leave the room.
How interesting.
I think that's a great artist that can evoke that feeling. Would I ever want that in my house? No. Right. But but I'm glad that it exists in the world.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, so you do art quilts, and do you feel like your art quilts are different than your charity quilts or your regular quilts? How are they different in your mind when you're working on an art quilt versus a charity quilt?
Often with the charity quilt, because a charity quilt, I want it to be something that is loved and used over and over again and washed. I tend to make it much more utilitarian.
Yeah.
I still want to have my stamp on it, creativity-wise, but my art quilts, they're an idea that's in my head that I have to get out. If I don't, it will gnaw at me until
really
I finally put it onto fabric.
Now, some people tell me that they use the charity quilts to practice new techniques that they use in their show quilts or their art quilts. Do you do that as well?
I use baby quilts for that.
You do?
I told the people at work that I would make baby quilts for anyone who was pregnant. And then I shifted location, and the place where I started working had 9 pregnant women.
That's a lot. Oh my goodness. You're just like, oh, this is not good.
But it's great practice, and I love doing it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because people will say, "Oh, you should sell them."
Yeah.
We're in a world that doesn't necessarily value that.
No, they don't. It's true.
I think there's room to sell those things.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I want to put that much effort in just yet.
Yeah.
To trying to sell them.
Well, we get that question. So that's kind of related to a question. Do you feel like, okay, you've gotten the hard questions. We totally kind of like you've got the hard test. Why did you get the hard test, right? All right. So we talked about what is art. What's the difference between somebody who is a hobbyist versus a professional? Do you think the line is selling, or do you think it's skill, or is there no line?
I think the line is very blurred in today's day and age because with Etsy, it's very easy to
anybody can sell
things.
Right.
Anybody can be a professional.
Right.
I guess I would describe the difference between hobbyist and professional in the same way that others have, where professionals make their living off of quilting.
Yeah.
However, I don't think of myself as just a hobbyist either, because I spend more than a hobby amount of time on it.
Yeah, me too.
I enjoy sharing my knowledge with others and inspiring other people.
Right.
I'm going to start teaching on a regular basis.
Oh, very cool.
So I'm excited about those things and sharing that with other people. I don't think monetizing it is always possible for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to either set up your own shop.
It's so true. It's true. We're thinking about we're all about the experiment and immersion, and so we've been thinking about ways to help people with that side of it. And we may think about experimenting with a consignment type shop where you could put up your stuff and see if people wanted to buy it, and it wouldn't cost much to do that. Because I think that even though it's easy to make a shop, it's still a lot of work, right? There's still publicizing it and all these other things. And so is there a way to pool the resources of the small, micro entrepreneur, so that if you did want to put up an art quilt, or you wanted to put up baby quilts, or whatever you wanted to put up, could you do that? So we're thinking about that.
That's what I'm in the process of exploring as well here in Maine.
Yeah.
There are Maine craftsman guilds and handmade in Maine sort of locations that sell either in mainly a tourist location, but sometimes just as a, hey, support your local artisan.
Do they do it online as well? Do they do consignment shop type things? Do you know yet?
I don't know. I am in.
Well, let me know. Yeah. I'd be really curious because Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, you've got such a strong craftsman tradition there, and it's sort of valued in this really interesting way that is not true of every part of the country. I'd be really curious of what role has digitization and the internet played in keeping that tradition alive, and how much they're doing online versus at local craft fairs or other things, Yeah. Yeah, it'd be really interesting. Well, I don't know. We're thinking about all the things we might be doing this year, but that's one of them. If people are interested, Also, these consignment shops often take a lot of percentage. Did you know that? So they take a huge chunk, and we wouldn't be doing that. So that's not really our interest is. That's not our interest. So.
But honestly, that's what galleries do as well.
I know, right?
Galleries aren't charity. They aren't doing it for the goodness of the artist.
Yeah.
They do want to support the artist, obviously, but that's not. I mean, it's a business for them.
Now, your partner does your partner does he paint? Like, does he? What would he describe himself in terms of his painting? In terms of like who he is. Do you know what I mean? Like, is he a hobbyist? Does he put in galleries? Sort of what level does he see himself? Where does he put himself in this sort of world of art?
He sees himself as a professional.
Yeah.
It is what he does.
That's how he makes his living. That's what he does. He gets up and figures out like all that.
Does he display frequently? No. But he does do the occasional show, and he is exploring more gallery work, etc.
That's interesting.
So, yeah.
What do you think that mindset is? Because your work is amazing, right? You've shown it to me. What makes you? Is it a mindset? Do you think? Like I am a professional X is because you feel that way, or is it again? I know we've just covered this, but I keep going back to this. I feel like I think you're right about this blurred lines thing. I mean, I look at someone like we talked about, Sean Kimber, super famous. We interviewed her. Her stuff is just stunning, 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 stunning. And my stuff's like really regular. That's totally fine. But I take it seriously, right? I still am sewing every night. I'm committed. And so the question is like, does it really matter if we have professional? I mean, some people really do want the labels of professional versus hobbyist, that they want that distinction because they don't want. So what I'm hearing is that they don't like the people that are the dabblers. They don't like people who put out maybe one pattern and they're not really taking it seriously. Somehow they think that harms the professional standing. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what I'm hearing from people, that they get freaked out by that.
I don't know. It seems to be the same thing that people complain about quilting being defined as craft rather than art.
Yes.
And I think it's both.
Yeah.
In that you are creating something, you're crafting something, you are using your hands to make it.
Yeah, but so you're doing that with every craft. I mean, that's true of fine arts too, right? What do you think you're doing with the paintbrush, right?
Exactly. And so I think people get hung up on what level of value it is.
Yeah.
I think people say, oh, well, if it's worth thousands of dollars, then I'm an artist, capital A.
Yeah.
If it's worth $50, then I'm a hobbyist.
And it can't be that either, right? That can't be.
And
it's not about the value.
I
don't know.
I think it's how seriously you take it, and how you self-define.
I think that's it, right? Like,
I mean, we're getting into a gender non-binary world.
Totally.
So
I live in that. Totally.
Why do we have to be in a binary?
I think you know what? I think you just nailed it for me, because I think I live in a my kid is non-binary, and I live in this world that like we're always questioning sort of who we are, what we do, sort of what our social norms are, and I think that's probably true. Like, why do we need to have these the binary doesn't work for me, and it's just maybe it doesn't work for me in any way, though. So
all those little boxes that people put themselves in allow for a level of comfort, because I've defined it, and now we can move on, or we can discuss it for where it fits within that category.
Yeah.
When something is ephemeral, it's very hard to how do I don't have anything else to judge it by.
Right.
And people get uncomfortable and itchy about the new and different because it's not familiar to them.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
Well, I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there if we don't kill each other all off before then.
It's true. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think I come from the non-binary. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be judged. But secondly, I don't know. I think it's more. I think you're saying it's blurred. It's more complicated. It's more than just hobbyist versus professional. I think of myself as a very engaged hobbyist, but I don't even like the term. Hobbyist seems kind of almost, maybe it isn't pejorative, but it just has this ring of like, oh, you're just a hobbyist. And maybe that's me putting that label on it, but...
Well, I think, again, it's... Every label has a sort of stigma associated with it. Like quilters, again, people go back to that grandma thing.
Right. That's a whole thing right now, right? That's so interesting. Didn't we talk about that beforehand?
We talked about that before.
That's
right. And grandma is evolving. Grandma is...
Right.
Is
don't be rude to grandma, right? We're not all grandmas, but don't be rude to grandma. Grandma rocks, right?
Exactly. Sometimes grandma rock climbs.
Rock climbs, that's right. That's right. Leave us alone.
And
We've earned it.
Sometimes grandma loves hard rock or EDM.
Grandma loves hard rock, right. That's right. Yeah. We have this thing that we really want to do. We have many ideas, but one of the things that we found is that it made me think about the grandmas, that there's some quilt shops that aren't very nice to people, that they're always kind of nice to me, right? Like they think I'm going to buy a bunch of stuff. But my kid, who is, half-shaved head, blue hair, with her girlfriend, with their girlfriend, not so nice to them sometimes, right? And so, like, we have this campaign of, like, just be nice. Like, that's, like, the only, like have a sticker that's, like, I will be nice to everyone that comes into this shop, because I think that's part of the problem too, is that people believe that, like, if you're a 50-year-old college-educated woman, then that's acceptable, and then anybody else is othered, and that's not good either. I just find that just silly.
I'm lucky in that the two really local shops know me. They're probably at this point tired of me.
That's very good.
Because I come in on the regular so frequently.
Yeah.
But when I first started coming, I got looks of, "Are you lost?
Right.
Sir, can we help you?
Can we help you? Are you lost? Do you need to use the restroom?
For your wife or your daughter?"
Right.
Right. We have to get over that too, because
it's ridiculous, right?
The same thing happens when older women go into a hardware store.
I know. It's terrible.
Or
that's right.
Young guys. What happens when a teenager goes into a gallery?
Right. They think they're right. They're hoodlums, right?
Radar goes up and people are like, is he going to steal, or is he going to damage something? Why is he here?
Yeah.
You don't know.
Like, just give him a chance, right? Like, and most of the time, so when I go into quilt shops now, like when I start to feel that vibe, because we go to a lot of quilt shops now, right? A lot of quilt shops. And I feel that vibe. I'm always like, look, they're purchasing the fabric. Like, that's who's buying. I'm not buying. Like, they're picking it all out, and I'm paying the bill. But go help them, because they're the customer. But sometimes you don't have someone to advocate for you, and I just don't get it. Why? And we do get it. We get it less now because of the podcast, right? Because like they're trying, because we're taping things usually when we're in spaces. But when we didn't. And when she was little, when they were really little, that was awful too, because they started quilting when they were 5, and they would be like, "Oh, don't touch that." And it was like, really? Like, what do you think they're gonna? How their hands are clean, so like, I don't know. Anyway,
well,
it's weird, I'm not trying to be all negative. I love quilt shops. Some just have a perception of who their customer is. That's all. Which is okay.
You have asked the question, is quilting a dying art? I would say no. Yeah. But I think that sometimes customer service is a dying art.
Interesting.
I think that people need to realize that the customer is not the enemy.
Yeah. No, we're not the enemy. We are not. We are not the enemy.
I've gone into shops and bought things on sale, and I have heard comments of, oh, people are just coming in for the sale item.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's all that I wanted to. Maybe that's all my budget allows for today.
Right. But you got us in the shop. So charm us.
Maybe I didn't feel welcomed in your shop, and I felt obligated to buy one thing, and I'm like, how can I get out of here?
Get out of here. I totally get it. Yes, it's true.
I feel obligated to buy because I
feel like I'm polite. Yes, as opposed to yes, it's true.
But I would agree. Be nice, be welcoming.
Be nice.
I think that a lot of times quilt shops overlook opportunities.
Yeah.
I think that they could partner with big box stores to really start driving some business.
So smart. That would be great.
Yeah. Because what big box stores lack in personality and knowledge, the local quilt shop has.
Yeah.
However, the local quilt shop usually can't compete with big box stores' prices.
Yeah, but you think about being able to that's such a great idea. I mean, because you think about they're carrying very different things usually, right? And you could see getting your core material at one place or going to the other place, but feeling like they're friends, that they're complementary. They're not enemies, which is what a great idea that would be. I wonder why they're not. I mean, and then quilt shops themselves feel in competition with each other, which is really weird too, because it's weird, right?
Because again, if you get more people in the game,
right,
then the pool that you have to split up, or the pie becomes bigger.
Yeah.
So sharing that pie is no longer so big a deal.
Right. The pie gets bigger.
Yeah. I mean, grow the pie instead of growing your slice. Yeah. Grow the pie.
Interesting. Yeah. So interesting. Wow.
And that's really what I want to get to in what I want to teach, because I want to teach people not only that they can quilt, because I think there are a lot of people who are fascinated by it, but are terrified because they're like, I don't have any skill.
Right, or I need to be perfect, or I don't know how to choose the colors. I could never do that. The self-doubt of I'm not the artist. I can't do this.
I want to teach people they can, and that creativity is not something that only a few people have. It's something that everybody has, and what looks good to one person is not necessarily good to another, and what you like is what you like. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah. That's what makes us human in some way. That's what the individuality is great, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, some of what I do is loud and bold and bright, and people are like, wow, that's dramatic.
That's
and I'm
really
like,
cool.
Yeah, but you don't have to like it. I mean, if you like subdued and soft, there's some of those things that I do too.
Yeah.
And I can show you how to do those things too.
Really cool. I have two questions.
I have two questions. With it.
Yeah, exactly. I have two questions for you. First, do you think creativity? This interview has gotten kind of deep on us. I don't know what happened. Do you think creativity?
Just because I'm heavy does not mean I'm Buddha and I know all the answers.
I didn't know. Yeah, you're not. No. But you were really. I mean, we got onto this track. So, do you think that creativity is like a muscle, that it's, if you work it out, if you keep pushing it, if you keep thinking about that, you get that's something you can build? Or are you just creative because you're born creative? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think that creativity is something first that you're born with to an extent.
Yeah, I think so.
I think everybody is creative.
Yeah.
I think it's a human urge, and we express it in different ways. but it is something that you work out.
I think so too.
And I think some people don't work it out because they've been told that they can't, or they're not good at it, or that's not something that you do. I mean, I could say, okay, well, boys don't quilt. Right. Or somebody could have said to me, boys don't quilt. Nobody said that to me.
That's really great.
Or if they did, I didn't listen to them.
Right. Someone told me about, is it selective hearing? Like when people say not negative things to you, you just pretend like you don't hear it. That's my strategy. That's really what I have. The trick is not minding. The trick is not to mind it. That's right. That's from a...
Somebody had told me that the key to a successful relationship, whether it's personal or interpersonal or business, is that whatever traits the other person exhibits, you ignore them and you just keep in your head the traits that you believe they should have.
You just ignore the ones that you don't like and like love the ones that you do. I like that. I had it when I was younger. My whole thing was like, I wanted somebody that if I don't use it anymore, but like if I had a curling iron, they didn't come back and I would always forget to unplug it, that they wouldn't scold me, that they would just like gently unplug it and be okay with it. And it really became like the worst. Like if you can deal with the worst thing that about your partner or the person that you love, then you're okay. Like everybody's got good stuff, right? But you're saying, which mine is like, what's the worst thing? Like for my husband, my husband who I've known for a ridiculously long time, like he loves to sleep. He's like a bear. Like he's always loved to sleep. Like he never, like that's his favorite thing to do. It always has been, even in high school. And I feel like that's his worst quality, but it's also his best quality, right? So he's always asleep. But
so whenever he's sleeping, just believe that he's dreaming of you.
That's so not true. But what you're saying is just ignore that quality and go for it. Now, the other question I had for you is your partner. Do you guys ever do collages or mixed media together? Have you ever done like oil painting on fabric or anything like that?
We do not collaborate. We do critique each other's work.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm newer at being critiqued than he, because he's been painting all the while we've been together.
Yeah.
I've been away from quilting I had been away from quilting for about 10 years.
Wow, interesting.
I'm still sensitive about being critiqued.
Yeah.
There are times when I'm like, I can't do that, or don't push me to do that, or I wanted to do that, and you're telling me it looks bad.
Yeah.
Usually I end up listening to him because he has an artist's eye for it. And if it works, then I continue to run with it.
Love it.
If it doesn't work, I say, you know what, I'm sticking to my guns and I'm going to do what I do.
And isn't that part of becoming, I mean, that's part of the critique process, right? Is accepting and defining yourself against the critique.
And that's how we push ourselves creatively too. I mean, I chose the guilds that I chose or that I'm in, not only because I wanted to kind of get out there and share my love for quilting and kind of expose myself to more things, but I also chose it because I wanted to be pushed creatively.
Yeah.
I want to see somebody doing something that I say, oh, wow, I want to do something either like that or, oh, that's a cool technique. I hadn't even thought of that. And now I am completely self-taught. So I don't know what I don't know what the bones of sewing are. So I don't know what rules I'm breaking by just
nice in some way, right?
Doing what I do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've tried some things. Some have failed horribly.
Yeah.
And then others, it's like, okay, now I just have to research how to do it in order to get it to work right.
It's cool.
I've got a project going now where I'm going to blend silks and brocades and burlap and quilting cottons and things like that all together.
That's very cool.
Because I want to play with texture as well as visual elements.
That's very cool. Love it. All right, last topic, intellectual property. Any worries about copyright, trademark? Does it ever come into your space, or that's not anything you worry about?
I don't worry about it, pardon me, so much because I try not to copy other people's work. Mm-hmm. I don't mind being inspired by other people's work. Yeah. But the idea of copying something fabric for fabric, square by square, just doesn't appeal to me. I've tried doing something by pattern, and I've gotten so bored that I literally had to cut it up and put it in another quilt in order to be able to use it, because it just was grating on me. Yeah. It's one of those things that becomes like a bugbear. It's just there haunting me. So I'm like, you know what? I have to find a way to use it.
Do you feel like when like that happens, because I've experienced that a little bit, do you feel like it's almost like it's pulling your identity? Like, I keep getting really heavy on you, but sometimes it feels like when I'm in a pattern and the pattern is what I don't actually want to go that direction. I don't want to go down that path. I feel like it's pulling my identity to it, and then I have to like switch it off. Like, no, I'm cutting you all up and I'm making you something else because I'm keeping it. I want it to be about my work. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you feel that way when you feel that way with a pattern, or do you just want to not do it anymore?
For me, it's really about, I want to express my own creativity. Yeah. I'm drawn to an idea because of the idea. Yeah. I don't want to replicate somebody else's work. Yeah. I think it's a huge compliment if somebody does. Yeah. I mean, if somebody looks at my stuff and says, I want to
do that. Right.
I want to do that exactly how you did it. That's a huge compliment.
I agree. I totally agree. And there's place for that. I mean, I do that sometimes,
and I'm totally cool with teaching you how to do that. Yeah. What I would rather is that you say, okay, I think that's a really cool idea, but I want to invert that, or I want to stretch that, or bend it, or twist it, flip it, cut it up, do something different with it. Yeah. Shatter the image and then split it up, or all kinds of things.
It seems like sometimes with patterns, I feel like I just want to be in that pattern. Like, I want to make that thing, right? We're doing this Gypsy Wife quilt along. I've done the Pat Sloan Sunday, the sampler thing. Like, but I'm trying to be in that space of that designer. I want to experience whatever that is. So, like, it's voluntary. But then sometimes I'm feeling like I get sucked down a path I don't really want to be in, and then I have to be like, okay, I'm done with this pattern. I'm going to make it, it's going to be cut up in different ways.
Well, I mean,
do you feel that way?
I feel that way somewhat. I guess it's more. It becomes, patterns suddenly seem to become ubiquitous. Yeah. And I don't want to be part of making something that everybody knows. Yeah. I've given somebody a quilt and they said, that's beautiful. Thank you very much. I liked the one in red at Walmart better.
Really? They said that to you?
And I wanted to snatch the quilt back and say, you're not worthy.
No, you're not worthy. That's so crazy. Right?
Because they didn't appreciate it. Understand. They don't understand that it was a product that I made. Yeah. That it was made with love.
It's a thing.
That it was made with care. That the product at Walmart, no diss on Walmart.
I love Walmart. I mean, I buy stuff at Walmart all the time.
I mean, and it's giving people who don't have the time or don't have the wherewithal to make a quilt, you can get a quilt.
Yeah.
Okay, the image is printed, and then machines sew the design on after.
It's just an industrial quilt, which is
it's
fine.
Probably going to last about 4 or 5 months after washing it a few times.
Right.
But it has its place too.
Right. It does. It does.
I just don't want to make somebody a quilt that somebody is like, oh, I saw the same thing somewhere else, and I like that one better.
I like the red one better. Yeah, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Weird.
I mean, and the same thing becomes true of fabric designers. I feel bad that I love Tula Pink. I love Kay Fassett. Yeah. I love Anna Maria Horner and all of those other things.
Yeah.
But I've gone to shows where all I see is quilts made of Kay Fassett.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's other fabric in the world.
There's other fabric. It's true.
I mean,
it's interesting. Do you find it's interesting? Because I like those too. I mean, I do like those. I mean, I appreciate their artistry, and they're incredible. They're incredible. Sometimes, and I even said this when Tula Pink came and interviewed. Actually, the house looked a lot better when she was here. To say, that's like our house
Tula
never
makes everything more fabulous, right?
Yes, indeed, and it wasn't chaotic the way it is now. But I even said to her that like her fabric's intimidating because like it's hard to get over the Tula-ness of all of it, right? Like the cave thing. And so I'm getting better about that, but I feel like sometimes it's easier when it's just anonymous fabric that you can sort of use you know what I mean? There's a kind of heaviness that comes with like that. I don't know. I'm being a little more. You know what I'm saying?
I think a lot of it has to do with the scale of it.
Yeah.
Cutting it up feels wrong because you're cutting into designs and you're
cutting into some beautiful stuff, right?
Exactly.
God,
and yet that's what we do as quilters. We take perfectly good fabric, we cut it up into little pieces, and sew it back together again.
We're a little bit crazy that way, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but
it's true.
Who isn't? I mean, look at the guys who rebuild cars.
That's true. That's very true.
I mean, you could buy a car that's in working order, or you can buy 6 cars, tear them all apart, put them back together to get one good working car.
It's true. This is the world we live in. We just happen to do quilting. Well, this has been like...
Makers gotta make.
Yep, makers gotta make. It's true. We do. Well, this has just been so delightful. I really, this is just great. Come back and chat with us more when you get new projects and you want to chat. Just want to sit because we're going to have lots of chairs and place to hang out because quilt shows are exhausting. So we're all about just want to sit and just hang out with us.
I've never experienced that one or 3,000 times.
Yes, right? Exactly. Just sit down and just hang out with us. And then also who we are. So we're trying to get a huge PowerPoint that will be on a big screen, sort of all the different interviews that we've done with people. But we're also now asking people if they'll make a simple quilt for us for the booth, either to display or to have as a donation or whatever. But would you be willing to? It's November, just to do something small for us because we would love. Your stuff is so cool. Doesn't have to be fancy. It can be a charity quilt. We're a charity. We're all about that. But I would love to see what you do. And really, what we're trying to do is
just about 17 projects going at any one particular
me too.
time. Sure
right?
One of those could fit.
That would be great. I would love it. It'd be so great. We'd be so honored. I had such a nice time with you. I'm glad the internet got all weird because we got a little more time to hang out. All right. Well, when I need more, I don't know why we got all super philosophical today, but now I feel like okay. Well, when I need to think about the deeper, I'm gonna call you. Wait, I need some more time to think about this.
See, that's what happens when your dad is an engineer and your mom is a psychotherapist.
Ah, so we were in a therapy session. I didn't know. You tricked me. That's so funny. Do people do that to you? Do they get all like theoretical on you like this? Does this like happen to you everywhere?
It happens to me all the time.
Are you serious? Because I didn't know anything like that.
Because that also sums up quilting too. Because I love the creativity part of it. Yeah. I love the involvement in it, but I love the engineering of it.
You do. That's like that. It's all of that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's so funny. Like something about like our conversation today was really like about who you are. Yeah, I love all the parts of it. I think it's so interesting. I think there is this engineering and art and thoughtfulness. It all goes together with this hobby that makes it so interesting.
It's funny because it is so technical that I think the one thing that keeps guys away from quilting is that a lot of it is done with a sewing machine.
Yeah.
And guys aren't raised with a sewing machine,
they think
or are taught that it's not something that
it's not acceptable.
Do. Yeah.
They need a different machine thing. They need it to look different.
Talk to the Quilting Marine.
Yeah, we are. He's coming on. He's coming on.
Awesome. Yeah. He's using his quilting to deal with PTSD.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
So cool.
So there are guys out there.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the guys get more attention because we're the rare bird.
Yes, you do. Makes me think of dance class. There'd be like a whole bunch of us girls, and then like the one guy, like everybody, like they would be always like, "You're amazing." And it was like, that's not fair, but I'm okay with that.
He could be clumsy and trip over himself, but he's a guy, and therefore he gets attention lauded on him.
I mean, I think that's what's interesting about you and Seth Hackler and others, that it's growing. So hopefully at some point you won't be an anomaly, and then you'll just be like regular, like, you know. But I'm okay with you guys having a little bit of the limelight. That's okay, you know. I think it's important, you know.
I like to shine the light back to other people.
Aw, that's
nice. Because too many times people devalue their own work.
They do. It's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so we definitely had a therapy session accidentally.
I'll send you the bill.
Totally. Totally. Oh my goodness. Well, what a delightful day. So I'm so glad we chatted.
Will be...
Yeah, exactly. So funny. Yes, we'll have our weekly therapy sessions. It's true. I'll be like, right. Yes, there is a lot of stress. I do think that there should be quilt therapists because there are some points. I don't know if there's such a thing out there, but there are a lot of stressful aspects of this, and and working through your stress, like the flying geese, you know, like goodness, right? Like that alone could just need a full hour to talk about the flying geese, you know.
Learning about the tricks and the tips and the things that make it easy take the stress out of it.
It totally does.
Say if it's stressful, you're doing it wrong.
I know, I agree. Totally.
Having said that, every time I pick up my seam ripper, I'm like, oh.
I know, it's true. Have you seen those T-shirts with the seam ripper? Like, with the seam ripper, it's like, this is not a good time.
Do not talk to me.
Do not talk to me. Totally.
But I do quilt better with a glass of wine in my hand and chocolate by my side.
Yeah, that's what people have said. Like, have a glass of wine. It's true. Have a little bit. Have a little bit of wine. Not too much. Don't drunk quilting. No drunk quilting. That's bad. We're not encouraging. Don't quilt and drive, right? Don't drink and quilt. But, just a little bit. Well, I think it's awesome. I really do want you and your partner to do a thing together, because I can't imagine. I've never seen oil paint on a quilt before. Have you?
I have seen painting on a quilt before.
Like watercolor.
And I've seen watercolor. I've seen acrylics. I've seen printing on it. And there's been huge controversy about people who take a painted surface and then quilt it because they're like, oh, that's not a quilt.
Yeah, right.
Again,
yeah.
People in their boxes.
Yep. There's huge. It's true.
Yeah.
And they also feel like, I talked to some quilters who hate putting their art quilts into quilt shows because everyone's fussy about the techniques. And so they'd rather do art shows with their art quilts because they're just looking at the art. And they're very frustrated by the quilting community and how they judge art quilts.
So that was one of the reasons that I did submit to a juried show this past year, or this year actually, was I wanted some feedback. And they gave me all the feedback that I knew I was going to get, but didn't they didn't tell me anything that I didn't know, which was really frustrating. I was hoping they would say, work on your composition, or you need to be a little more adept at color choice or things like that. What they said was, your points didn't match.
Right. That doesn't help. That's not helpful. But because maybe you don't want it to match, you know?
It was freeform string piecing. It was not meant to match at all.
Okay, we're so supposed to stop, but do you know of any groups out there that are creative writers have like workshops and other people? There's got to be that for quilters, right? And artists, like the notion of, like, you've got like built-in critique person, right? But like, do you see groups that are doing this, that are really thinking through sort of the art side of the quilting in art quilts?
I would say that Sakwa probably does it.
Yeah.
And I haven't gotten down there yet. Having talked with Pam Weeks over at
Pam. We love Pam.
Yeah, over
Pam's
at New
huge.
England Quilt Museum.
Right.
She's saying, you need to get in touch with the Sakwa people.
That's great. Pam's amazing. I love Pam.
It's funny because all the people you've been interviewing lately have been all the people I've been talking to lately.
Oh, that's great. See, that's great. That tells you that's where we're getting it. We're getting it right. Well, Pam's amazing. She's a curator at the New England Quilt Museum, and she's one of our first interviews, and it's always kind of been a great guiding light. If she's guiding you and part of, she's one of your mentors, she's just spot on and amazing. She's amazing. I love Pam. Yeah. It's great.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, so true. Well, thank you for all your time and the therapy.
Well, thank you for listening.
I will. We'll chat soon. Do you want to review this before we post it?
No, that's totally fine.
All right,
that's totally fine.
Cool. All right, fabulous. This will take a little longer to post because we gotta do some with the editing problems, but we will get it up soon. Awesome.
Let me know next time you want a therapy session.
I will totally do that. We are so doing that. And then next time you're here, the house will be like back in order because this is not normal for us. So I'm kind of freaked out by it. But maybe it is. Maybe it's just the new normal.
I promise that everything behind me will still be there because I'll be on to 7 other different projects.
Oh, that'd be great. I love the quilts behind you. They're amazing. Thank you for your time today, all your time today. I feel like we spent the day together, and this is just great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great fun.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend Gard. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.